the Florida Writer Podcast, a discussion about writing and other things.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast with your host, Alison Nissen. And today I am lucky enough to be revisited by John Russell. John, could you give us a 60-second elevator pitch about who you are and what you write?
Alison, I'd be happy to. I've been a professional psychic for over 50 years, a paranormal investigator, and now I am the author of 3 multi-award-winning nonfiction books about the paranormal. I've completed a 4th book, and it'll come out next year, and I'm writing on my 5th book and got a lot more planned.
All right. So as a psychic, do you get help from beyond writing?
I do. I get some inspiration from my guys. I think they help me a little bit and guide me a little bit, but it doesn't keep me from having to plant butt in the chair and do the work.
Well, yes, that's true, right?
Yeah.
Every step along our journey is our own step.
That's it.
So tell me about 20 ways to increase your psychic abilities. What is the premise? How can people use their psychic abilities to help become more successful writers?
Well, the new book, 20 Ways to Increase Your Psychic Abilities, that came about because over the years, all of my clients would always ask me during readings, what can I do to increase my psychic abilities? How can I become more aware? How can I activate my intuition? How can I have a better contact with the other side so that I'm led and guided? So I would tell them these things in the readings, and I knew that they worked because the other side had taught me these techniques directly. And I had used them with success, so I knew that they worked. So I passed these on to my clients piecemeal in the readings. And then it dawned on me one day, I need to sit down, put this all in a book, and make this available to everybody so that they can have this all in hand, all 20 lessons, and use that over and over again, refer back to the book again and again. And so that was the motivation for the book. And 20 ways, there's 20 chapters. And each chapter contains a specific tool or technique. For example, the first chapter is on using psychometry, how to learn psychometry. And each chapter defines what the tool or technique is. It tells you step by step. You don't have to know anything, don't have to have any prior knowledge. I take you by the hand, lead you step by step on how to use the techniques, get good at them, practice them, and then the real world application of those techniques, so that you can be led and guided, so that you can receive inspiration, so that you can be a better writer or a better artist or a better person or a better whatever. And so that's basically the overview of the book.
All right. So, okay, that's really cool. What's psychometry?
Psychometry is where you take a physical object that someone has owned and has had a long time and knows the history of and has some cherished memories because of that object. And then you take that object and you hold that object and allow yourself to receive impressions from that object. So memories, emotions, pictures in your mind's eye, phrases may come, words may come, whatever. And so what you do with that, the reason you do that is just simply to train that part of your psychic self to receive those images, to receive that. And when you get good at that and you get accurate at that, the real world application of that then is that if you're thinking about, I give this example in my book, let's say you're thinking of signing a contract and you're just not real sure. Everything looks on the up and up and everything looks professional, looks fine, but something's nagging at you. And there's a pen, an expensive pen on the person's desk. And you say, oh, what a lovely pen. Can I look at that? And you handle the pen and you use that moment to exercise psychometry on that pen and receive impressions from that pen, from that person. You go, oh, this is not going to be a good contract. This is going to cause me problems down the road. They haven't been completely up and up here. There's problems in this company. And so that's one real world application of it. Then when you get really advanced, you can touch people. You can just lay your hand on people and receive impressions from them and know if that person's being honest with you or not, or what their health conditions are, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of applications, but that's psychometry in a nutshell. And it's real easy to learn. It's one of the easiest things that I've ever taught over the years.
And it's just sitting with an object.
Yeah.
And just like
You
sort
just,
of breathing it in, feeling its
you just sit with that object.
wavelengths.
And then it's crucial that you have somebody with a good memory and that can give you accurate feedback after you've given the impressions of that object. Because if they don't have a good memory, if they don't remember half of what they've done in their life, then they're not going to be able to recall for you what you're telling them, if it's accurate or not. I had one friend of mine I did psychometry for, and he was really astonished of the accuracy of the impressions that I received. But there was one thing that I got that he couldn't place, and it took him a few weeks to remember it. And it was a family situation that indeed existed exactly as I described, but he had forgotten about it. And it took him a few weeks later to recall that. So when he did, he was rather astonished.
Right. So I'm just going down a rabbit trail right now, but
Sure.
if I were to pick up an author that I really, really enjoyed and held the book in my hand, the author is not on that book because the author hasn't touched it? Or
Exactly.
is it the author would be in that book because they wrote it?
When you get really advanced and you really practice this and really dedicated yourself to it, you would be able to receive impressions from that book, even though the author hasn't touched it. You would be able to, depending upon your degree of skill. For example, when I shot the TV pilot for the History Channel, we went to the Lincoln Museum, which is underneath Ford's Theater. And then we went to the Peterson House, where Lincoln died the following morning. And I touched objects there to receive the impressions of them. Now, some of those objects are reproductions. Very few of the actual objects of Lincoln's time were there. It's mostly reproduction pieces. But for me, because I knew how to tune in, and I'm practiced in this, the reproduction objects had picked up the leftover vestiges of the energy that were there from the original objects, because you don't ever clean an atmosphere out. All those energies remain. And so I could get all the visions, the energies, the things that happen from those reproduction objects, just as though they were the original. So, and likewise, if you're really trained and really skilled, you've really practiced this, you could pick up that book and get impressions about that author and some things about their life.
How is this different than meditating?
Well, meditating, you're more passive. You're not really striving to necessarily receive or perceive a specific bit of information. Meditating, you're more passive and you're more receptive to whatever comes in that meditation. And with psychometry, you have more of a focus, and you're focused on getting specific bits of information that are verifiable from that specific object. So it's more focused. It has more of more of an aim, and you're looking for more specific things as opposed to just receiving whatever comes, in meditation, where you're not focused on any specific outcome or result.
I could see how this could be very useful for writers,
It
because
is.
so as a so I write creative nonfiction, but sort of memoiric creative nonfiction, and I could take something that somebody has if I'm trying to tell their story,
Right.
and I could really focus in and hone in on who that person is and get an impression that I can then put on the page.
Exactly right. Yeah, you would have a better insight, a deeper insight into their life, into their motivations, into their history. You may even get some glimpses of things in their past, events that they did, and so on and so forth. And of course, again, when you do this with someone, you want to have someone with a good memory, so that when you finish the session, they can say, oh yeah, I remember we bought this object at this place that you described, and the weather was this way, and so on and so forth. So you want somebody with a good memory. You don't want somebody that misplaces their car keys every day.
Well, what other lessons could writers learn from your book?
I think one of the greatest things that writers can use from my book, from the techniques in there, there's all manner of techniques in dream interpretation, lucid dreaming, guided dreaming. And as you know, a lot of writers, a lot of musicians, a lot of artists have received inspiration for their works in their dreams. And I think our dreams are a very neglected source of creativity. And in my book, there's several different techniques where you can utilize your dreams for guidance, for inspiration. And that's a super useful technique for writers, for anyone creative, but especially for writers. And one thing I always caution people, though, there is a caveat there. Excuse me. When you receive something, and I have received things in my dreams, specifically related to stories I wanted to write or things that I wanted to write. And let me take a break here and clear my voice. Excuse me. But in receiving these things in my dreams that would make good additions to the material that I'm writing, it's very important that, especially if you're working on guided dreams during the night and receiving intuition and guidance in your dreams, it's very important that you either keep your phone with a recording app by your bed or a pencil and paper by your bed, because the other side, through your dreams, will give you some wonderful bit of guidance and inspiration, some wonderful idea for a book or part of a chapter or part of a story, and it'll be fantastic and it'll be marvelous. And I guarantee you, unless you wake up and write enough of the details down that you can get working on it the next day, by the time you wake up in the morning, it'll be gone. So guidance can come to us in marvelous, wonderful ways, very helpful ways, but we have our part to do to make sure that we don't lose that. And one example of that from my own life, I was lying in bed one morning, waking up, and I was still kind of half awake and half asleep and kind of in that almost dream state. And I received the most marvelous fiction story. It was just incredible. And I got the beginning, and I got the middle, and I got the ending, and I got the characters, and I got the plot. And it was like, wow, this is really good. And then I drifted off back to sleep. And I woke up, and I couldn't remember enough of the darn thing to do anything with it. So always carry a pen and paper around, writers. Always carry a pen and paper around.
Yeah, I did all my graduate work in that in between sleep and morning state. It was really incredible. It was a great experience. I would wake up in the morning. I knew what I had to do. I'd drift back to sleep for what felt like a few minutes, but I would be able to wake up and an entire, thesis would be basically completed.
Right.
Now, out of curiosity, so as a psychic, what do you think about AI?
Well, AI, in my latest book, I devote an entire chapter to AI. As a writer and as a psychic, I don't like AI. AI is never going to replace a human being. AI is never going to replace the human touch. AI doesn't have emotion. The writers have emotion. We have feelings. We can put that emotion on page in a meaningful way. I think in ways that AI never can. There's been a lot in the news lately, and I'm sure you've seen it, where like even some of the big sports magazines and things have resorted to publishing AI generated articles with non-existent reporters, where AI has just made up a photo of somebody and they've stuck it in there and they publish these things. That's about as disingenuous as you can be in the writing world. It's just terrible. And from a psychic perspective, what's really interesting was I saw Morgan Spurlock, the guy that did Super Size Me. He did an entire special on AI and on robots. And there were some little tiny miniature robots, little bitty 2 or 3 inches long. And they were basically just programmed to go and learn on their own and do things on their own and develop their own intelligence. And one of the things that they were capable of doing was returning to the charging base when their batteries got low and charging themselves back up and then going back out and doing their little tasks. Well, through no programming that was initially included in their software, through nothing that any of the programmers had done, all of a sudden, on their own, out of their own volition, these little robots started trying to hog the power charging station, even when they didn't need the charge. Even when they were full or almost full, they would try and hog the power station and keep the other robots away from it. And they began to notice that this began to occur, and they didn't know why. Following AI lately, and of course that's been in the news constantly, the father of AI, the person, I can't recall his name right off, but the person that's basically credited as being the father of AI has said, this scares me to death. We have no control on it. We need to stop it. We need to put on the brakes right now and try and get this thing under control, because everyone is seeing in the AI industry that the potential for this gigantic explosion, a singularity occurring, if you will, in AI, to where this machine intelligence all of a sudden becomes sentient or very nearly sentient, starts reproducing itself, starts taking over things, starts deciding what's good and what's not. That's a very frightening scenario. And so I'm not an AI fan. I'm on the bandwagon with everybody that's saying, hey, we're going way too fast with this thing. We need to slow down. We need to take it easy. We need to put some brakes on this. We need to have some controls here, because at this point it's just, okay, the money's there. Let's see how far we can push this thing, how fast we can push it, and tons of bucks are rolling in. And that's not the way to do it. When you're dealing with the potential for a machine intelligence to have control over your life, that's a very frightening thing, because a machine intelligence is not necessarily going to develop emotional safeguards or caring about your well-being or anything else. So not an AI fan in writing or in the psychic realm.
Well, it does seem to be the antithesis of creativity.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a very forced and a very artificial creativity. And it's not even really a true creativity, because in training AI, they've trained AI by, and of course the Authors Guild has mounted a lawsuit on this now, as well as other writing institutes, where they have just wholesale gobbled up all the books that are published out there and fed them to this machine, to the AI to learn. And so that's not learning. That's just taking a bunch of blocks that somebody's put before you and started rearranging them by yourself and calling it intelligence. And that's not. Now, if the machine were able to start writing stories, if AI began to develop and write stories on its own without any input to fall back on, then you'd have something. But right now, it's just it's a monkey with building blocks in front of it, just stacking the blocks up, So it's not a fan of AI at all.
Well, John Russell, how can people find out more about you, about your new book, 20 Ways to Increase Your Psychic Abilities?
I've got a dedicated author's website now. You can go to johnrussellauthor.com, johnrussellauthor.com, and all of my books are listed there. The links to click on to buy them. More about the books. Each book has its own page that you can connect with from there, with readers' reviews, editorial reviews, so on and so forth. The endorsements I've received endorsements from a lot of notables: Uri Geller, George Noory, Mike Ricksecker, Phyllis Galdi, publisher of Fate magazine. So all those are there for people to see. So all that is linked up at my author's website, johnrussellauthor.com.
Fantastic. John, are you ready to switch to our rapid fire questions?
Yes, let's do it. That's always fun.
Do you have a favorite pair of shoes?
I do. Skechers.
All right.
I love my Skechers.
What is the weather outside your window right now?
Clear and mild.
And what is next on your bucket list?
Next on my bucket list is just keep writing and keep finishing books. I love writing. I enjoy writing. I get a lot of feedback from my readers that my books are meaningful to them, helpful to them, that they enjoy them. And so that's it for me. Just keep churning out as many books as I can. I love it.
Well, John Russell, thank you so much for stopping by.
Alison, I appreciate it. It's always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You have been listening to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast with your host, Alison Nissen. Alison out. Ooh, we're all done.
I love it.
John Russell is a published author of nonfiction with 3 multi-award winning books in print, Writing with Ghosts, Angels, and the Spirits of the Dead, and A Knock in the Attic. A third book, 20 Ways to Increase Your Psychic Abilities, was published in 2023 and hit the Barnes & Noble Top 100 Best-Selling Books. John has completed his 4th book, The Crying Tree and the Magic Rock, due for publication in 2024. He's currently working on his 5th book right now, The Can Sack Ghost. For more information about John Russell, visit his author webpage at johnrussellauthor.com. For more information about the Florida Writers Association, visit us at floridawriters.org. Until next time.